without further ado, I am going to bring out a couple of these amazing ladies that we have here today for enhancing your tasting skills. The first person I am bringing out is the Virginia Miller. She founded The Perfect Spot in 2007. She is the West North America chair for the World's 50 Best. She has been the Zagat editor for San Francisco, the SF Guardian restaurant critic, and Table 8 national editor and VP of content. She is published in over 60 publications, regularly covers dining, restaurants, travel, spirits, cocktails, bars. So Virginia, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. You are awesome.
I am thrilled to be here. So good to see you, Nate.
I'm a huge fan of yours. And after yesterday's talk, I know that we have a lot in common with not just us, but our another amazing guest speaker today, the amazing Ziggy Eschliman. She is among America's most enthusiastic, authoritative, and entertaining libation figures and experts. You have been, for 25 years, known as Ziggy, the wine gal, and you've set and reported trends in wine, spirits, and all things to imbibe in. How did you guys get into the palate side of things? I'm very curious from your points of view of how you guys got into this.
For me, my journey into the world of smell and taste things with alcohol, and it really began in my youth, growing up in San Francisco, and we were allowed to have wine at the table from the time we could sit at the table, and it was not a pretentious thing, but ventured up to wine country a lot growing up, and one thing led to another, and I actually owned a winery and was making wine for a while, and that really helped to heighten my senses with taste and smell, trying to figure out how to hone in on actual aromas and flavors of things from vodka to whiskey was really challenging at first, but taking a few classes and then spending a lot of time actually at the farmer's market, picking things up, different things, and smelling them and tasting them, things that you might not normally smell or taste, like 5 or 6 different types of potatoes, smelling those, tasting those, and then applying that to flights of different spirits and trying to find common ground and figure out, does that really smell like bananas or does it smell like coffee? And trying to choose all the options. So I think it's been a few decades of working on that, and it's still a work in progress, but I'm fortunate that I really enjoy doing it and discovering it and learning every day.
I grew up in a teetotaling household, and we were not allowed to even drink wine on
Really?
holidays. So the fact that I do what I do is kind of a shock to family and community I grew up in, but it started as food. And I was always a passionate eater, just like my dad. And I am Sicilian on my mother's side, so she's a great cook. And we grew up a pretty family of 6, feasting together all the time. But also I grew up in 4 states, and the majority of my youth, 6 to 18, was in suburbs of LA or New York City. So I grew up in very international areas, and my dad and I especially would be the ones most interested in, let's go try Venezuelan food. And the rest of the family would go, I don't know. I just couldn't wait to try everything. But drink, I just fell in love with as I went along. And the more I tasted, the more I realized that no meal was complete without a pairing of some sort. And so I would go, okay, I'm having thyme and rosemary in this drink and this cocktail. And isn't that so culinary? And it's a recipe for me at first. And then it didn't take long before I started to go, well, what's in that gin that you're trying to play off of? Oh, okay. Well, what's in the base spirit you're trying to highlight? And the next thing you know, I was off to the races.
I'm going to start off with Ziggy. I've got a quick question for you. So got a couple things I want to cover here. Ziggy, I see that background of yours and all these amazing spirits there. How do you develop your palate?
Just tasting over and over and over again. It's a work in progress. And I taste things all the time. I'm like a curious creator and a curious taster. So funny thing is, I'm not a huge drinker, But I really get into the smell and taste of things. So at any given time, especially in the morning when my palate is super bright, that's the best time for me to really discover nuances in a lot of spirits, especially some of those spirits that might be a little bit more complicated to pick flavors and aromas out of. So I might just line up, 3 or 4 things in the morning and taste it, and then 3 or 4 things in the afternoon. And just take notes on it, and then maybe go back to them again and see if I still am tasting and smelling those same things, or if I'm tasting and smelling different things. But most importantly, to do it with a really fresh palate,
Right.
and not, after I've had a lot to eat or drink during the rest of the day, then my palate's kind of shot.
So yesterday we
But
were speaking and I was learning from you. Talk to me about your idea of cataloging.
so I'm a writer by trade. I'm a journalist, and so I take copious notes all the time. And now I still take a lot of old school notes and still walk around with 80 pencils and pens in my purse. But now that I'm a little bit more high tech with the iPad, keeping things cataloged with, here's what I was tasting on this flight, on this particular thing, on this particular day. There have been several instances that, some of the people that are running, like, say, for instance, the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, this has happened where they'll get a certain producer. At one point, there was a vodka producer a few years back, and he really wanted to know what the panelists wrote, what the judges wrote down when they tasted his vodka. He wanted to know how he could improve his product. And he called me and they go, Ziggy, we know you have the notes. As we get older, our taste buds change a little bit too. I should say, as we progress in time, our taste buds change a little bit. So it's good to go back and forth between notes I've written about the same spirit 5 years ago, 2 years ago versus today. On average, I taste probably about 600 to 700 wines a month. And on average, I taste probably about the same in spirits.
That's incredible. And I mean, that's unbelievable. And Virginia, for you, same question.
Yeah, similarly, it's a lot of volume. Just like Ziggy says, the more the better. And that's certainly how I got acclimated early on too. And it's still the rule, not only do I, go to 10 plus restaurants a week and have drink pairings at all those places and then multiple more bars besides. And that's when I'm not traveling. And pre-pandemic, I was traveling half of every month. So then when I'm traveling, I'm packing the days even more. That's my slow pace at home. I passed the 12,000 mark on restaurants this year, and I've done more than that of bars. And I'm really good at tasting and spitting. So don't worry, I didn't drink all those things. I'm very good at balance, because then I got to get up and write all day, 10, 12 hours often on the computer, and research and interviews and editing and consulting and judging. So there's no way I can drink all that, but I taste everything. Because that's the other thing, not only taste everything, but side by side. Side by side taught me everything as well over the years. Not everything meaning I know everything, meaning was just as crucial, was comparison. Once I had, 500 Gewürztraminer, I started to get Gewürztraminer. If I just had 5 of them, where we got a good a little good base laid, but it's not the same.
I'm of the belief, and it's a very strong belief, that women are 5 to 6 times better at tasting whiskey than men are. This is definitely proof in the pudding.
Yeah, and I have scientific studies on that where they say it does have, I don't have children, but they say it has something to do with that innate sense of smell that is related to birthing. I'm going to butcher that, but I've read different things about that there is the heightened sense of smell in women really does heighten our taste, because, they both go hand in hand. But yeah, believe me, what I have faced over the years, and I'm sure Ziggy can say the same, you face a lot of people that have a lot of assumptions. Of course, not the majority, and thankfully less and less over time, but especially in those early days, and when people assume you're just a kid and you don't know. So it's been nice. That's the nice part about getting older, is getting a little bit of a weight behind you, and you don't automatically get that assumption right off the bat, as I did when I was first starting out.
18 years ago, I entered the room at a very fancy pants hotel. The top floor was a Mandarin Oriental. It was gorgeous. And I walk in and they had me put on a lab coat, and I walked into this room and it was filled with much, much older gentlemen, all wearing the same white lab coats. And they all looked up and stared at me, and there was no other women in there. And so I just proceeded to walk up to every single one of them and introduce myself and shake their hand and, and just told them I'm like a sponge. I want to, partner with you and hear everything you have to say about spirits today. But that was my very first experience judging spirits. And that was 18 years ago. And I think about that all the time. And I think about how far I've come.
I was going to say, all the things we were talking about palate learning before are all crucial, and anybody can do those things. But judging really is an accelerator. When you get in a crash course or sit in a room for 3 days and all you do is taste a 100 things, 200 things all day, your palate's fatigued. You start to learn how you're going to go the distance. And spirits, wine's intense too, but spirits is a whole other level with that proof. And then You're working up to cask strength, and I'll sit there in a day and I'm judging absinthe next to fruit brandy next to whatever. And thankfully at the best competitions, they pace that all out in terms of what's going to be the biggest palate bomb, and save that before lunch or before a break. But it's intense. You start to learn not only even tighter comparison and side by side and how you're going to do this, but how you're going to get through and how you're going to stay focused and give a fair shot.
You know what? I did a tasting of Glenmorangie 18 at 11 Madison Park, and it was with Dr. Bill Lumsden.
Nice.
And he said, please be there for 8 a.m. and please don't brush your teeth. And I was like, 1, I don't even know what 8 a.m. is. And 2, you want me to not wake up, brush my teeth, and walk through the streets of New York on the way to the hotel? And we went and did it. And like, what a difference on the palate from having all that bacteria actually sitting overnight versus, when you scrape everything off with a toothbrush, what a vast difference that is. Like, it's literally night and day. My gosh.
I was going to say too, in addition to that, even ones that I like ADI that I judge at, when we have a lunch break, they make sure we have really bland food. Like, we don't get any seasoning. And there's nothing I hate more. It's like no seasoning, no spice, no nothing. And we just stay neutral all day. And even harder than brushing my teeth is not having my espresso in the morning. That about kills me,
Oh no!
And have Italian after all. And I'm like, but you try not to do that, and then, or they'll just say same again. If you got to have coffee, have a real Americano watered down, which I like it. I like a stiff, robust espresso. So it's tricky. But even for the same reasons on the nose, this is why, over 15 years ago, I stopped wearing perfume, and I've never done it since. I don't, anything like that interferes. It's not about being a stickler about it in everyday life, but I just don't even go there anymore. Because even if I'm just going to dinner, I don't want that interrupted. But also, there's a baseline you got to start sometimes too in the morning, because every competition we just start judging first thing in the morning, and it can taste, that first taste is fresh, but it's also harsh when you jump right in at 40, 45, with it. But usually a number of competitions I judge will start off with a flight of vodka first, because again, you get that nice neutrality typically, and you kind of lay that base, and then you get over that initial like, all right, and then by the end of that flight, like, I'm golden, and then everything else tastes soft after that, and it's no problem to jump into whiskey or absinthe or whatever we need to do after that.
That might be probably the best spirit to, now that I'm thinking about it, to wake your palate up and actually get it going and get all the senses going. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, what are the steps for you guys to actually taste through something?
Well, there are some similar steps to with spirits and wine, but not really any need to swirl anything in your glass. The reason that you do that when you're judging wine is to open a wine up. And when you're judging spirits, well, depending on the glass that they're putting the spirit in that you're judging, but you don't stick your nose right into it. Like with wine, you'll stick your nose right into that glass. You want to get everything that you possibly can in the aroma. And if you do that with the spirit, you're going to burn all your nose hairs off. So, and depending on who you are, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But I will hold the glass, and I always want to smell anything before I put it in my mouth. Always, that goes with food, that goes with any of the vegetables in my garden, fruits, anything. But especially with spirits, I will want to smell it first, and then I taste it, and then I smell it again, and then I taste it again. And remember, with judging and tasting even at home and getting through all these, I'm spitting everything out, and so the process of doing it over and over again is letting me into that spirit, into the glass, figuring out what the aroma and what the flavor is over and over again.